Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Danny, and this is a Common Rule podcast. Well, I'm in my feels, as my buddy Danny Applesauce would say. I think I might have just recorded the last podcast at this particular location here at the De La Hits Studio Factory. It looks like it's going to go through. The house is, it's going to be, I don't know. I don't want to talk, I don't want to jinx it sort of thing, because we've been through so much. We've been going through a lot, trying to put this house and get it through and shit. I hope it happens. I am very just so much over this whole process right now that it just doesn't work well with how I'm feeling lately and where I'm at and how frustrated and anxious I've been the last 6 months. So I just don't want another hurdle or an obstacle to come up. We're just waiting on a couple of things. Hopefully we'll be out of here in a couple of weeks. Again, so as far as having a formal podcast with interviews and with people coming over and conversating, that was the last one here. Seems like we only have possibly a few days, less than a couple of weeks here, and because of my situation, I really do need to just start packing up, because it's going to be a very slow process for me just being on one foot, and I'm just going to start packing up and moving some things into storage. And even when that goes up, I actually don't even really know where the fuck I'm going to be moving to just yet. Supposedly there is a place for me to be at, but we're not 100% certain that place is going to be ready come move out date. So I don't know. Anyway, it just adds to the pile of shit that's been happening. But it's bittersweet. I really love this place. I thought it was really cool. It was a great place to podcast, of course. Even when I was just podcasting over at in my other man cavey place. And, of course, photography-wise, it was just a great place to shoot and make portraits and work with models and stuff here. It was great having a pool. The way that this house was set up, it's on a corner. There's an alley in the back, so we don't really have any neighbors towards the back or towards one side of us. So it was really pretty private. The place was pretty big, and there was plenty to shoot around here. I wish we could have kept it and kept going, but the way things are, a lot of things are happening, things are moving and shake, got to move onward and upward, The only constant is change, as they say, right? Well, but, of course, the podcast is never going to stop. I might do some solo issues between now and the move-out date. I'm just won't be able to have anything set up to, all the furniture is probably going to get moved out. I definitely got to downsize or pack everything away as far as the equipment, and I'm just going to I have a microphone and a laptop for a bit, so it'll just be me. Now, in this conversation here with Noemí Alejándra, it is short and sweet. She was on her way to a run and a get-together with a run, so she didn't have all the time in the world this time. It's a clinic on efficiency, though. It is a great conversation that we still had. Of course, I wish we could have talked longer, because she's very interesting, very artistic, and I would have just loved to have a longer conversation. Now, if you've been listening to my couple other podcasts, the conversations have gone long, and I know I've been saying like, hey, let's do a part 2. I will really finish the conversation, and I mean it, man. Personally, speaking to those people in the past, I just really, it really inspires me, especially during these times for me, because I just can't wait to be 100% mobile again and apply the things that I've learned to my workflow, just overall, just to my thought process on being creative. So yeah, I take a lot from these conversations, as I hope that you guys do as well. It's just very inspiring to speak to so many people here locally that are artists in every single genre that I speak to, aside from fucking keeping me from being bored as fuck during these last few weeks. It does really, truly inspire me, as I said. Again, I know if you guys have been keeping up, I've been really pushing on the podcasting and trying to get as many people in here as I possibly can as I close out this chapter over here in the Highland Estates area of Phoenix. The idea is to get to a little apartment and be able to start podcasting there at least. We're tossing around the idea, though, with Danny Applesauce and Rafa from the Sick Ass Food podcast, which I'm in and produce as well, that we might be getting a studio somewhere in the area. I've already looked into a couple of them. They look pretty fucking cool. The idea is to be able to set somewhere up that looks a bit more professional. So we might be looking into that hopefully pretty soon. Today's conversation is short and sweet. She was running short on time, no pun intended, because she was going to a run. And that's where we start off our conversation with Noemi. We talk about running and how that's helped a little bit through the creative process. Not necessarily, I would say it would have helped indirectly through her creative process, more or less. We definitely get into her background in journalism and talk about her current project, just shot on Polaroid, which is very interesting. You guys really need to tune in and all the way through and hear that. She's going to have an art show here. I'll leave all the information in the show notes, so please go to the art show here and check her work out. Of course, if you have any questions or concerns, you can always send an email to thecommonrule@gmail.com. You can follow me at The Common Rule on Instagram and Restless Samurai on Twitter. I'm soon to be setting up the YouTube channel so that all these videos go on there as well, in case you're a visual person and would like to check those out as well. And the final thought on this real quick is that I do plan, and I've been telling you guys this for a little bit now, but I think I am going to plan on setting up, maybe not necessarily a Patreon. I'm not necessarily 100% married to the subscription aspect of it. I mean, again, I'm a little self-conscious about asking for money for a podcast, but certain things help getting equipment and getting things done, especially during these days. But I think I am going to set up a Venmo or a Cash App, and I'll set up the links there later on as an idea that I'm tossing around. You know, I'm not married to it or anything like that. But like I said, now that the podcast is moving forward, things are happening. Once in a while, a donation would be very nice. And I'm thinking on the Patreon thing, again, that I'm not completely married on. I think I'm going to have it set up to where you get something, like an actual print. I'll probably set up all those links right to where, like, if you donate X amount of money, I'll give you an original D. De La Cruz to matte and frame and show the whole world. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy my conversation with Noemi. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate that. You just come back from a trail hike, from hiking?
No, so I am doing a run after this.
Oh, really?
And it's with the running club. That's why everything has time parameters.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where are you guys meeting up for the run?
It's at Manor, that like shoe boutique shop next to the Shake Shack on Camelback and Central.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The only reason I ask is there's a running group that meets up over at my buddy's brewery here on Hilton.
Oh, nice.
Hilton Brewery, and it's like once a month or the second, I don't know what kind of month it is, but they meet up there and they drink before or after, one of the two. And I
would hope after. That'd be a hard run.
Yeah, it'd be kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that's where they meet up. So awesome.
Yeah.
Now, are you have you just looking up and down your Instagram there? How long have you been running, or have you always been running?
No, I recently got into it. I think with most artists and just a lot of people in the world, we just don't talk about it a lot, but I just have a lot of anxiety. Yeah. And I had to figure out how to release all of that energy that was mostly living in my mind and then manifesting itself physically. So running was really good because you can set incremental goals, which is the same thing when you're trying to survive out of your art. Is like sometimes that can become very overwhelming. So running has been like that therapy fuel. There's this really good quote that says like life trains you for running and running trains you for life. Okay. So I've been sort of dipping that philosophy into my photography and just, keeping a level head and just keep going, trying to survive.
And so far as it helped, are you good with your, well, no one's ever really good with their anxiety, I'm sure, but I'm not, but is it therapeutic? Does it help you a lot?
Absolutely. Because you do a lot of breathing. You know what, for me, being able to keep a pace and doing specifically really long runs, like I never thought that I'd be able to run more than a mile. Yeah, that was impossible.
Okay.
And yesterday I finally reached my personal goal of 7 miles.
Wow.
Which I've never done. But the whole point is just being able to, what is it, like just training your mind for awareness and breathing. And when you're in an adverse situation or you don't get a job, a gig that you really wanted, and you need to make money at the same time, running has really just translated itself into like, okay, let's take a moment to just take a deep breath and take really full deep breaths, and like learning how to breathe properly through your nose and out through your mouth. That's really weird. We're just talking about breathing, but yeah.
No, it's a thing.
Yeah.
Hey, I saw the Karate Kid. I don't know. You might be too young for that.
No, I watched it. Yeah.
And have you raced yet? I think I may have seen a post, but are you like just like at a 2K or something like that?
I did a 5K back in Malibu back in November, I think, and that's just a 3-mile race. And then 2 weeks ago, I did the Phoenix Rock and Roll out in Tempe, and it was a 10K, which is 6 miles.
Okay.
And I did that with the flu, so that was horrible.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was either the dumbest or the strongest thing I've ever done. But again, I just think that level of commitment and discipline that I applied in that situation is the same level of commitment that I've applied to my art. You know, when I've been in the rut, I still push through it, and you just push through the mud and you take it with you and you just see what you can create. And it's such a privilege to be able to run, you know, I have the ability to do so. So rather than staying in bed and sulking,
I'm starting to learn that more and more since my ability to run was kind of taken from me a little while ago, but I'm going to get back into it. So
yeah, I mean, it's at your own pace. It's whatever you can.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's just so cheesy, but it's the same philosophy for life itself. You know, we're all just trying to survive, and your brain is wired for flight or fight response. And when you teach yourself that running is not something you have to fight, but you can kind of have serenity and peace throughout this very arduous process. It begins to kind of seep into your actual life and really help you just navigate it. Yeah. But it's only been a few months, so.
Okay, no. Yeah. Hey, it's a great story. Now, in those few months, though, have you seen your craft, your art, or any creative output sort of change or maybe even decline a little bit first, or or has it been affected at all?
I don't think it's been necessarily affected. If anything, I've struggled. I think a lot of artists who like are purist in the sense where they don't want to make art to capitalize on it. They're just trying to make passionate art, you know, for the sake of art. They probably struggle with the money aspect, like where you have to sell your art essentially. And I've always struggled with that. So when I started running and just using that as a therapy form, that really helped me just kind of power through the resentment against the capitalistic nature of our society, basically. Yeah, where was I going with this?
Well, as far as like maybe it not affecting running, not affecting your art directly, but it looks like indirectly as far as maybe getting a clearer head on the business aspect of it.
Yeah, I think that's where mostly it's been helping me. Just booking more gigs, actually putting myself out there, feeling confident to do that, and creating a sense of business, and just be, you know, for the longest time, I didn't really call myself a photographer. And I used to just say like, oh yeah, I make things. And then I would like squirm and be like, okay, I don't want to talk about this anymore. Like it's my art. It's something very personal to me. Of course, Instagram kind of made it's a performance now. You know, you're in a public space and you're showing what you've got to offer. And that for the past few years just took a toll on my insecurity, my anxiety, and confidence level. So right now I think I'm in a really good headspace where I'm now starting to like realize, you know, my art is not contingent upon what society needs or what they're demanding, but there can be a balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And to get into it, exactly what is your art? You're a photographer.
Yeah.
But are there other creative? Yeah, you do. Are there other creative outlets that you have besides photography?
I think at this point, I've just been calling myself like an artist in the sense that I dabble in photography. I love graphic design. I like dabbling in After Effects, which is a form of motion graphics, which I'm not very good at, but I like doing it for my sake. I love to doodle. And by doodling, I mean like I love to draw things that I'm seeing. I like to take a notebook everywhere I go in case I see a certain face that I think is really like a caricature of a face. So then I do little meanie faces of people, and then I write like something that I'm thinking about next to their face. So that's why I say like I just do a lot of things. I'm sure I'm not the only one. I just get really bored in one medium, and I can't do the photography thing all the time. Although I think that that's a bigger part of my identity as a whole, because it not only supplies an income, but also it's the first medium and craft that I fell in love with. And then, and videography. Like I love film.
Nice. And what do you seem to go back to as far as a theme or subject matter the most in videography or photography or just in general? What do you think that attracts you the most?
I think it's just exploring like a mood, basically. It's just exploring emotion. I have this Polaroid project that I've been working on where I basically ask a person, like get their consent to basically ask them very intimate questions, you know, like when was the last time you cried? And we just kind of get into it. And it's like, it's a moment for them to unravel. But at the same time, as someone who's taking the photo, I'm also unraveling with them. You know, we're exposing our souls to each other at a different level that we're typically used to, specifically in our society, because it's always go, go, go.
Yeah.
Or you're performing a certain emotion because you have to keep up a facade. So I'm trying to provide this like safe space. And I think that through that Polaroid project, I really realized that through the past few years, it's just, that's probably one of the reasons why I struggled ever calling myself a photographer, was because everything that I took a photograph, I just felt so intimate to me.
Yeah.
And it just felt very like my own private world, you know? I've always been someone who kind of like a Walter Mitty character. Like I just always in my head, you know, I can imagine a really great future, a really great present, or like traveling, but it could all happen in my mind. And that's sort of what photography is for me. You know, we create these worlds. And I think that's what really the theme is, just really exploring vulnerability, allowing people to hone in who they really are and not need to perform a level of happiness or a level of contentness. It's just like we can photograph what we're feeling in the moment.
Yeah.
And I've tried doing that. I failed a lot of times. I've succeeded others. It's a journey. Well,
being so vulnerable and asking for not just other people's vulnerability, but sharing yours as well. Were you able to share those images right away, or is that something that you kind of grew into? Because again, for me, it would be like, I ain't showing anybody this. But how easy was that, or difficult was that for you, if at all?
I think that as someone, like when I was in college, that's when Instagram started becoming really prevalent and important in terms of like creating an image for yourself. And so I think because I was growing up at the same time that the internet was growing up, I was very aware that I needed to always share. There was this need of sharing, like you got to share things, you know? So recently, because I only started that Polaroid project, I think back in the summer. And it's because I have a Polaroid camera that was my sister's back when she was a kid. So back in the early 90s. And I'm pretty sure it was my dad's. I have no idea where this camera came from. I just know that we have family photos that came out of it. So, I just wanted to be able to figure out how to be very consensual about sharing it. You know, to me, the photos have always been very intimate, but I didn't necessarily talk about the intimacy part of how vulnerable I was in taking photos, how emotionally exhausted I was after photo sessions, you know? So yeah, I don't know. I'm at a point where it's just like it's an ebb and flow. It doesn't need to be an all tug and like a tug of war situation where people are demanding things from you or you're demanding from them. It's more like a conversation, basically.
Yeah. When you were in college, did you study art and photography, or?
I studied journalism.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I thought that I wanted to be like a big hotshot reporter in the news. And I do still work in the journalism industry. That's sort of like my day job, but it's at night, as a copy editor and designer for print papers, which isn't something that necessarily my generation is too into.
Yeah.
Just because we're very active online.
Yeah.
But that keeps me aware of just what's happening across the world. You know, I've always had the sense that what I wanted to do had to have like an altruistic purpose. And in art, that's really difficult because it's like, well, who are we necessarily influencing with our art? You know, our art's very personal.
Yeah.
And I struggled with that a lot. You know, I think that's why I decided to go to journalism because, well, to be honest, I only went to journalism school because that's the only college or degree that I knew of based on a show with Amanda Bynes called What I Like About You.
Okay.
And her older sister was a journalist and she was very like financially stable and just had it going for her, you know? So I always said like, okay, I'm going to be a journalist. And then I discovered what it was. And I was like, okay, yes, a voice for the voiceless. And then I'm like, okay, that's just very paternalistic and not okay. You know,
Okay.
so it's been through journalism, I discovered videography, and then through videography, I discovered photography.
Okay.
But when I started doing video, it was more, I was teaching myself. And then from there, I grew into photography and discovered a whole world and a whole community of people who were creating. And it's just fascinating, you know?
Yeah. When, do you remember like the moment when you said, all right, photography, this is it? Was there a photo that you took or maybe a photo that you saw where you went, okay, this is for me sort of thing?
I got really lucky when I was 21. No, I was 20. One of my friends, Cole, he messaged me saying that a few of his musician friends needed a documentary made. And I was like, hell yeah, like I'll do it. And at that point, I still didn't know how to value myself. And I didn't know because I didn't necessarily have the reputation for doing documentaries, you know? So I didn't feel like I could charge. So there was that element that was missing. So I was just doing this out of pure passion and because they were passionate for their music. So I did this documentary that ended up being like a whole year-long process. It was exhausting. It really showed me how much work goes into it, and it was just me. And typically in documentaries, you have a whole team of people who are doing it. But I have so much footage of it, and I think that's when I realized, like, this is incredible. You know, these people are sharing their space with me. Yeah, I'm a fly on the wall, and I'm capturing these moments and freezing them in time for them, and cutting them up and telling us a cohesive story. And that's where journalism kind of comes into it, is that everything that I do has to have some sort of sense of a story.
Yeah.
I think that's when I knew, like, this is it. Because I was able to connect with these individuals at a very personal level. They became good friends of mine. And it was just really fun. And, like, their music, like, their fans, like, kind of seeped in. And they were so supportive of the work. The photos I was making. And so I was like, hey, everyone was so nice. So I think there was so much validation that made it feel really good.
Hell yeah. Which,
obviously, validation is only good for so long. And then it starts playing with your mind when you don't get it.
Yeah. It's a drug.
Yeah, it is. I think I just watched Miss Americana. I don't know if you've seen it.
No.
It's the Taylor Swift documentary that just came out. That's sort of what she talks a lot about. It's just, you know, you needed the validation from people, and that kind of keeps you going. And then when you don't have it anymore, you're just like, oh, what happened? I'm no longer good enough. So yeah, it's just for the last 6 years, it's just been growing.
So it took you a year to, I assume you finished the documentary?
Yeah, I finished it. It was fine. They were really appreciative of the work. I was ready for it to be over at that point.
Okay, yeah.
So I think I watched it once and I haven't watched it since.
Okay.
Because I was just like, it was one of those things where I grew to love and appreciate the craftsmanship of videography, of photography, of production, what it takes to do all of it. But I also resented the entire experience,
Oh, okay.
Because I come from an immigrant background. So it's like that's why I started with art a lot, is like when you want to feel proud of something, but then for your family, it's like, well, did you make money? What'd you make?
Okay.
It's like, oh no, I made the art.
Yeah.
The art is like the thing that's important. And they're like, no, the money. Like we're here for that, chasing that elusive American dream. And I'm like, no, that's the dream right there. So it's always been this like back and forth struggle. And I think that's always fed into the whole why I try to make experiences more vulnerable for people and creating a space for them and a space for myself. It's just evolved over the years.
So growing up, did you have the kind of artistic support that, I don't know, that you wanted, let's just say, or was art more like, okay, you can play with this, but you need to go out and make some money somehow?
Yeah. I've never thought about it that way, but I don't think there wasn't really room in our family when I was younger growing up for my parents to be supportive of like art, or to be able to recognize that, oh, she's more artistic, or she doesn't, because my sister's very like business oriented.
Okay.
So we're definitely like cliche, kind of like one's an artist and one's a business person. But we grew up in a very like tumultuous home. There is like alcoholism involved, like abuse of drug and whatnot. So having to grow up and see like domestic violence, I very tapped into that whole Walter Mitty role, which I didn't know that was a thing back then. But just being very dreamy, living in my head, creating imaginary friends, and like that was my version of art, I think. And obviously nobody else could see it because I'm creating worlds in my head, So I think they didn't necessarily suppress it, but I don't think that we ever really got a chance to explore it the way other people have had the opportunity to. I mean, if anything, it just represents that art can be a coping mechanism, and it can be the one thing you grasp for survival and understanding the world around you.
So after you finished the documentary, was it soon, when did you start to look at a more artistic viewpoint? Was it the documentary, or when did you start more like exploring art for art's sake and not exactly for a commercial sake?
I think when I was 17, I went to Mexico for the first time to visit my parents' hometown, and my grandparents took me to El Rancho, which is where they grew up. And one of our, like my great aunt, she was still alive at the time. She's like, at that point, she was 99. She's super old, already kind of like in and out, but she had this beautiful like adobe home, and her entire house was a garden, and then like her kitchen. It's like, just think very, like just very indigenous style of a home. Like she had a donkey like in the back of her kitchen, kind of a thing. Like it's very rural and beautiful and pure. And she's this old woman, and she wasn't wearing a sock. And as we were leaving, I took a portrait of her, and I lost the original copy because one of my hard drives crashed. And always back up your work. Yes. But I think that's the one photo, kind of going back to your previous question, that's the photo that sort of solidified it for me, that I was like, I can, like, this photo is very powerful, not only in its ability to capture her in this moment, and for my grandma to be able to remember her, and for us to like connect with our lineage. But yeah, it was, I think that showed me that I could potentially have a place in the art world.
Yeah. Do you work in sort of set up goals or even projects for yourself for your work?
Yeah, I think that's where also running kind of comes into play. You set incremental goals, and that's sort of how my mind works. I cannot, like, I'm not a very big picture person. I don't have a lot of foresight for the future. So little baby goals of like, I think my friend Tanya said it, like, you can only look 200 feet ahead of you and you can't focus on anything else. It's like driving, you know?
Yeah.
You can't really see what's around the corner. And the Polaroid project, which is what I started last summer, and it's going to be at a gallery. They call it a gala, but it's a gallery in March. That's sort of like a more sort of structured version of a project.
Okay.
Usually my projects are more loose based. Like I have an idea, let's go do it. And then we do it. And then I kind of like need to forget about it.
Okay.
And then maybe a few years later, I find it on a hard drive and I'm like, okay, let me continue this.
Gotcha.
But the Polaroid one is the one that's been more consistent. The documentary, I had people waiting on me, so I had to complete it. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Because you actually hit on the next point that I was going to make. Yeah. So you are going to make art shows. You do have art show coming, and you have the Polaroid show coming up in March. You said, right?
Yes. So
and where's that at?
Let me pull it up.
Okay.
Yeah, it all happened really quickly. I applied to, it's like a grant program. It's called ArtLink, and it's a community in Arizona.
Okay.
And it's called the Art Detour 32, and it's in Phoenix, Arizona at Park Central. Phoenix, Arizona. Downtown Phoenix.
Okay.
And it's called Park Central. It's on Thomas and Central, and it's on March 19th, and it's this large warehouse thing. And basically, when you apply for the grant and you get partnered up with an artist who's already more established, and they have a lot of funding.
Okay.
And so it's a collaboration between me and someone who's more established and another artist, because our mentor ended up choosing two. And he's a sculpture artist. So, and I'm doing photography and the other person is doing painting.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was it collaborating with someone, a mentor? How was it, or how did that affect, or did it affect the project that you're working on right now? Did they have any tips or anything like that?
Yeah, they had more, I told them from the get-go, I had never done anything like this where I presented it to a larger audience, or I had to create a setup for it. This is because typically the way I would show somebody photograph, it's either I would print it and frame it for them, or I would show it on an online gallery.
Okay.
And this is the first time that everything's going to be very tangible and it was going to be hanging. And so that's where P is coming in and kind of using his sculpture background for creating some sort of platform to hang the photos so that people can kind of walk through them and really experience the photography rather than having them up on a wall.
Wow.
Traditionally.
Okay.
So that's what we're working on still. That's basically what February is going to be all about. It's just like getting all the photos finished and then creating an art installation with a painter and a sculpturist. Is that what you call them?
To get an experience out of the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So, are you working with the painter too, and or does everybody have their own theme?
We each have our own medium, but we wanted to connect the theme. P had known that I was working on these Polaroid photos, that again, it was just a personal thing for me I felt that I hadn't done anything for myself within photography. Yeah. And so I decided, okay, well, I'm going to pick a medium that doesn't really doesn't require much skill, you know? Yeah. And I chose Polaroid, and he had seen a few of the portraits. His girlfriend's one of my really good friends, Jessie, and she's an artist too. And I think she may have shown him. So he was super I really want her to participate in this so everyone can see it. And so when I explained to them my project, I'm like, it's this idea of being intimate, in a sort of public space with somebody that you don't necessarily know. Yeah. And just being vulnerable and just unraveling, Yeah. And then he said, that's interesting because my whole piece is about coming undone, becoming undone. Yeah. And the painter, I think she does more tarot stuff and it's more spiritual and connected to the energies in a room. And last I spoke with her, she was considering she's doing an 8-foot painting basically. Wow. And everything's going to be, it's going to be a legit experience. You can just walk through this, and his sculpture is going to be massive, probably the size of this room. And it's just this idea of unraveling, and hers is going to be one of the tarot cards. I don't remember the name of what that tarot is, but it's a nude woman, but she wanted to do her own portrait and the woman's body. Okay. And I was thinking about it yesterday because I was trying to figure out how are we going to connect it and how are we going to explain it to people. And I'm like, well, his is unsprung, mine's unraveling through photos. And then as you walk through it, you'll end up at her paintings, these like 8-foot paintings, and it's this nude woman, and I'm like, well, that's as vulnerable, as exposed as you can get.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I think it'll be interesting. I think this month is when we're going to be probably doing more collaborating.
Yeah.
Because we have to figure out dimensions and all the logistics and whatnot.
Yeah, I think that's going to be awesome. Now, is there a specific reason why you chose Polaroid as opposed to any other medium?
I chose Polaroid because it doesn't ask anything of you. You know, you just hit the button and it does it for you. And I wanted to, the way I set it up originally, it's like I just wanted to have a conversation with someone the way you and I are doing, but in the process, find just capture little moments and find little vignettes in which they showed a lot of emotion. Yeah. And just trying to hold space for that one moment. The way it first began was like, I want you to be able to take whatever emotion you're carrying it and like place it on this photo, you know? Yeah. And now you can carry it side by side. And then when Pete came into the picture and we talked a little bit more about it, it sort of evolved. And I'm like, okay, no, this is a moment for us to just unravel with each other. You know, it's a consensual space for us to talk about things that we carry with us every day, you know, that we don't normally get to talk about. Yeah. So I think on one hand, it's exploring performance of expression, but also the genuine nature of expression. And
what have you personally taken away from this these conversations and these portrait sessions on it? Is there something in particular that has hit you the hardest when you speak to somebody's story and, of course, and their vulnerability?
Yeah, there's two. I mean, they're all. Well, on the one hand, it's just that I'm walking away with, I just think I feel very honored, you know, that it's like that they're willing to do it. And a lot of these people are my friends or people that I would consider friends. We just haven't had, like, just years have gone by and now we're reconnecting. But I just am honored that they're allowing me to be in that space with them. So like on that hand, it's just, I'm walking away with a lot of respect for people. And again, it's just, I'm walking away with a sense of understanding them better, but also the world better. Yeah. Because people can be very complicated. Our minds are very complicated. You convince yourself of one thing and then you just go and run with it. But also, you know, the thing that I'm gaining the most is just the skill of listening, the skill of sitting and actually paying attention to a story. Like I've had people tell me stories about how when somebody important in their lives passed away, you know, and I didn't expect it. And I was like, I didn't think that you would give me the privilege for you to tell me something so personal and so deep, you know? People whose siblings struggle with suicidal ideations, you know? And that's heavy. Like they're just kind of coping with me. And then we kind of have a conversation about those things. Yeah.
Wow, it's almost therapeutic in certain.
Yeah, I always try to remind them. I don't know if I unplugged this.
No, you're good. Can you hear still?
Yeah. I can hear you. Yeah, it's definitely. I tell them like, oh, it's like I'm your like life coach because I'm obviously not a certified therapist, and I always say like if I ever do respond and it sounds wise, like it's just I'm only talking based on my experience. Take it with a grain of salt, but also. Just like we're just here for each other. It's just like as friends. We're just having a conversation.
Flowing and just talking. Yeah, it's amazing how people, given under the right circumstances, just open up. Sometimes they seem to open up to complete strangers more so than somebody they're familiar with or they know.
Yeah. I think I could never figure out my place in the world. You know, like as cliche as it is, like the identity as like the daughter, like being first generation American, like you really do feel like you don't really belong in spaces. Like you're like, well, I'm not from over there and I'm not from over here. And then you have like in the media or like the administration with the president, like it's just, you have a lot of labels being thrown around. So it's like, I don't fit in certain spaces. Yeah. I don't feel still like I feel very insecure about the gallery, you know, like I'm like, this isn't a space I've ever participated in. But I think it's the perfect project to bring into that space or to carry with me in that space. Because in a way, it's just going to comfort me because it's like, I'm bringing all these emotions in. But yeah.
Do you, because I think, anyway, as far as the Polaroid project, is that something you're going to continue to explore? I mean, I hope it is. I mean, not just the gallery one and done sort of thing, because I think it'd be a great. I don't know if you know this one cat. He does the Humans of New York sort of thing. Oh,
Brandon, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know him personally, but it's definitely like my project is definitely influenced by people like him who just go around telling people stories in a portrait sense. Or there was this older gentleman. He would ride his bike throughout New York, and he was more in the fashion world, and he would just take photos. I want to say his name's Bill, but I'm forgetting his name. But it's definitely influenced by Brandon. And just, I mean, when he started his project, he had been let go, you know, and it was during the Great Recession of 2008 and whatnot. And so he was just trying to figure out what the hell to do with his life. Yeah. So he started doing that and just caught on. And I think there's something to be said that when you just do something honestly, you do something with passion and with heart, people will pay attention. And you can, as opposed, I mean, there's two like forces. You can take that route, or you can do the more strategic, like business side. Yeah. And I'm like, I think I'm somewhere like kind of gravitating in the middle somewhere. Yeah, as a photographer, those types of projects like Humans in New York and your project really kind of like, okay, should I try that? But I realize that I don't think I can do that. I'm not that kind of, I don't have that aspect, and there's certain things that I don't like either, like taking pictures of homeless people or some other subjects. Do you have something that you won't work on, or something that you won't photograph, or something that you won't display or portray at all? Did you have any sort of limits like that? I think I found my limitations within journalism. I have a lot of photojournalist friends, and I think that they're able to document situations that are very difficult to stomach. And actually, I just spoke with a friend who was asked, like, can you go, we need photos of, you know, transient people, homeless people. And her response is like, oh, no, like, I can't do that. And I agreed with her. I'm like, that's ridiculous. It's like, how do you take a job, you know, something you're going to be paid for, and then like you get to walk away from their situation. Yeah. And I think that's difficult. So I agree with you on that sense. Like I don't think I'd have the stomach or the right mentality, the right information to like really engage, at least for photography wise. You know, I think that there's other more effective ways that you can participate and try to help. I think with immigration, like, it's very difficult for me to ever fathom that I would go down to the border and try to cover an event. Yeah. Especially because it's so close to home, you know? Because I have the privilege of citizenship and whatever that means, you know? Yeah. And I don't think that I could really be okay with going into a space where people are community organizing, doing exhaustive emotional work, and then just going there, taking photos, and then walking away from it. You know, I can't necessarily do that just because in my mind, it just doesn't sit right. And I think other people, it's important. It should be covered, and other people are more equipped to handle that. Yeah, that's a great point too. I mean, I see it that way as well too. There's better people doing other things that are better at it than I am. Yeah. What are your, do you have any projects in the horizon that you want to work on, or maybe an ultimate like fantasy project that you'd ultimately like to start and finish? Yeah. Over a year ago, I got a few friends together and we filmed like this visual idea I had. And I really wanted to call it like Hecha a Mano, which translates literally to made by hand. And it was exploring motherhood and through the lens of being a daughter, because I'm not a mom, but a lot of my friends are. And just the way I grew up, I associated more with my mom and the strengths that she had to like persevere in the situations that she found herself in. And we got to do that. And it was the same thing with the documentary. First, I love video, but at the same time, it's very hard for me. It's like the most challenging thing I've ever done. Yeah. Because I take a lot of video and then just going through the footage, I have so many different ideas that I can't cohesively bring it all together sometimes home. So I told my friend Jose, I'm like, can you just take the video footage? You can do whatever you want with it. I'm tired of it. I don't want to look at it. But when he said yes and he started talking to me about some ideas that he had for editing, I got, again, that renewed passion. I'm like, oh,
nice.
What was missing was the collaboration. You know, I just needed another voice, another mind. So I'm excited for him I'm just going to have to see what he does with it and to marry all of my ideas with his new perspective. I can't wait to see that. That'll be awesome. I think. So it'll be like
collaborate with someone that gives you synergy. I think that's one of the best things ever.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much. I know we were on a little bit of a time constraint today, but I really appreciate you taking time and coming and talk to me. Hopefully we'll have a part 2 and talk a little longer if you'd like.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Have good luck on your run today.
Oh, no, thank you. Thank you so much for being flexible. And for my rambling, I have no idea if any of it made sense or if anyone can walk away with something.
Oh, the whole thing. Yeah, it'd be awesome.
Sweet.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.